Oh, okay. I think I just lost you for a second. Now we're recording.
So I was looking at your website, and I got to tell you that a lot of what I like, I've got wouldn't say that I'm a photographer, but I've got a photography background in that I'm an amateur, and that I can appreciate a good piece of art when I see it, whether it's photograph, whether it's painting, whether it's regardless of what the medium is, I can tell. And I was going through your page, and I saw a lot of the guys and the gals that you have in a gallery there, and I felt like each picture was really representative. Not knowing any of these people, I felt like each picture was really representative of who they were. I feel like I was looking at these people like naked and raw, and they weren't naked, but I felt like they were exposed. There probably is not a better picture of any single one of them out in the world, and I think that they'd all probably agree. I do. I feel like they probably every one of those pictures that you have up there is probably each of those models' favorite shots of themselves.
Dude,
They
I
had
appreciate
said
that.
that, right? I mean, I'm sure some of them have said, "I love that picture." I mean,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, dude. That's not why I called you, but
you can hang up now.
that's all I needed. Thank you. No, for for my audience and whatnot, can you just introduce yourself? Well, I'll just say real quick that I had you on today because this is Matthew Scarfo. Am I
Scarfo.
saying it right? Scarfo. Yeah. I just want to include I want to encourage like a lot of different artists to realize like body supports the mind. So a lot of us think that we could just be creative and whatnot, but a lot of times it helps to be creative with the body and the mind, and it's kind of crazy. It's hard to explain how they influence each other. It's almost beyond explanation to me. I mean, I myself, like most of you know, I practice jujitsu and yoga, and I swing a kettlebell every now and then, and I just try to stay as active as possible. In fact, I think I'm going to do some jujitsu. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's COVID, and we're not supposed to be meeting up. But
Have to air this in a couple weeks.
but I'm gonna get Matthew to introduce himself to us. Can you tell us a little more about yourself, sir?
Sure. So, my name is Matthew Scarfo. I'm out here in New Jersey. Been a personal trainer in some capacity for the last 20 years. I'm a corrective exercise specialist and human movement specialist. I do a lot of work with my clients with breath work. I work with all different kinds of performance athletes that are interested in increasing their performance, whether it's cardiovascular or strength, but we really go about it from the inside out as opposed from the outside in. So we really strength really starts in the mind, and I think that we've got far greater potential than any of us give ourselves credit for. So I do a lot of work with other people looking to improve their performance as well. I help addicts extend their periods of recovery, their moments of recovery. We can protract that through breath work and through some other tools. And that's about it. Just trying to help as many people as I can, meet as many people as I can, and go as many places as I can go.
That's cool. I actually did a breathwork workshop recently. Like, what's today? 2 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. It's past Saturday. Um, it was really good. It was jujitsu based. Breath Fitness is the website. Miles Lucas is the guy who taught us. He's a Wim Hof certified instructor, but he
Awesome.
also learned breathing techniques from Hicks and Gracie. So, which
Okay.
it's pretty interesting. I'm sure you're familiar, but just for the viewers, um, as far from my experience, Wim Hof is mostly breathing in and then holding, for a period of time, and then the Hicks and Gracie method is like the opposite, to where it's
Mm-hmm.
like lots of exhales and then holding, which is pretty interesting.
I
Um,
think there's two sides to that though, right? I mean, there is the inhale and there is the exhale, and I think that they both. This is it's not just about how much oxygen you can get in your body. It's also about how much carbon dioxide can your body tolerate and still perform and still function. And I don't know so much about BJJ. I mean, I certainly know the Gracies, but I don't know how it relates to that. But I would have to assume that it's really got to do with, man, when we're on the floor and you've got me in a triangle choke and I'm just trying to outlast you, I've got to be able to hold my breath. or at least do without air for a much longer than I would ordinarily, right? So my body has to be able to function in an oxygen depleted state where I've got those waste products that are circulating and aren't going anywhere. I think Wim covers really the yin to that yang, and he covers more of the breathing in and changing the neurochemistry of your body, which is a result of like the alkalinity of your blood, the high levels of oxygen in your blood. He can initiate an adrenal response by doing his breathing techniques, right? So I think that they're both equally important, right? And what I focus on a lot is more of, I mean, I certainly practice those things, but the diaphragm, right? That breathing in muscle is probably one of the most underused or misused muscles in your body. We often don't use it as we should. We sit, we're contracted, we don't breathe in all the way, we don't breathe out all the way. We kind of just let it sit. It would be like if you just didn't exercise a particular muscle for years, if not decades at a time, right? And you've got a weak diaphragm, you can't breathe in to capitalize on all those great things that Wim does. Yeah. You could really only breathe out because those muscles are the ones that are tight and overactive. But I think that it's really a matter of the balance of carbon dioxide, I guess, resistance and really replenishing your body with oxygen, getting the red blood cells up and things like that in order to improve your performance, but also improve your stress tolerance, right? I think those are probably the two sides of it.
Yeah, the way I was trained as a yoga teacher for a little bit, and the way I like to tell people is, I mean, this is pretty much what you just said in some ways. I try to tell people to make the breath fuel your movements instead of your movements fueling your breath, right?
Yeah.
So you're already charged to make that, instead of wearing yourself out and trying to recharge the body. You know, I love it's harder than it sounds. You know, it's like it takes practice.
It does. I think it's probably our most under-serviced part of our potential is probably centered around our breath.
And it's like we take it for granted. Like it's just an automatic function.
Oh yeah, you don't even have to think about it.
What do you mean breathe? Cool. So yeah, man. So I guess you could say if anybody's out there looking to get healthier, man, start with your breath.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it predicates everything. I mean, without breath, you don't have movement, because without breath, you're dead. Without breath, you don't have, bodily functions, because without it, you're dead. You really need to, if you can improve your breathing, then you can improve your life without doing a single other thing. I think that in and of itself runs enough of your body's systems and processes through what they're designed really to do, that it allows for certainly a core level of health. Core, not necessarily musculature, but organ function. When you take a deep breath, when you take a good deep belly breath, your kidneys move over 2 inches within your abdominal cavity. Okay, that creates vitality. That massages the organs. That allows for blood flow and lymph flow and so many other things. That if we don't take those deep breaths, those organs are just sitting in there essentially rotting. So yeah, absolutely. I think breath start there. Just start there.
Just atrophying.
Yeah, completely.
Your lungs are atrophying if you're not using the whole way, right? That's the way I like to think of it. It's like you have to move. You're fighting atrophy at all times, basically.
Yep.
Fighting that disuse.
If you think of it in terms of a car, imagine just having a really small intake. I mean, that's what you got. All this potential horsepower, all of this potential action, all of this potential energy that's just sitting there because it's trying to breathe through a straw. If you can just open that intake up and allow that engine to really function in its power curve, when that horsepower and that torque cross, that's where you're operating. That is your sweet spot. And if you can't bring enough air in there to fuel the machine, you'll never see your potential, whether it's mental, spiritual, or physical. I think that the breath is really, I mean, it's the origination of life, right? I mean, it's the first thing we do when we're outside of the womb, is we take that deep breath and we cry. I mean, it's where life starts, and I think that we have to stop taking it for granted.
Life starts at breathing and crying. Life is suffering. Suck it up, bitch.
And then it ends the exact opposite, you know. But yeah, that's but it's it's true. It's we do take it for granted. When you're in a chokehold, you take it for granted, and when you're sucking wind trying to run up a hill that you're trying to attack for the first time, you take it for granted. So, and you could practice it right now. You could work that muscle out right now just by breathing deeply and intently. You don't have to get up. You don't need a bar. You don't need a machine. You just need air.
Yeah.
So I think
I like to, just talking about it right now. It's making me suck. I feel I have to always encourage people to use the full capacity. That's what I'm always looking to stretch.
Mhm.
Not only do you have like the exhales and inhales, but like at a resting time, like while we're having a conversation, I'm trying to and feel that top, and then
Yeah.
feel the bottom, top, bottom, and that's like if you haven't meditated before, as talking to the audience, just sit and do that. Just see if you can keep your breath going all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. See if you can do that 90 times.
I bet you most people can't. And
No, it's hard.
what's important to note, one is right when you breathe in all the way, it's important not to block it. You don't want to, close up your throat and allow your diaphragm to take a break from that. That would be like doing a curl and then just putting it on your shoulders and expecting your biceps to get stronger. You've got to keep that muscle under full tension, if even just for a moment, right? And then when you breathe out, you want to make sure that you're letting the air kind of exhaust itself. You're letting that diaphragm lengthen, letting the air out, and then you can use your expiratory muscles, right, to squeeze that air and let it go out all the way. But it's a muscle just like anything else. I can't do 90 reps of anything without losing my breath. And the interesting thing is, imagine exhausting your diaphragm to such an extent that you lose your breath. It almost doesn't make sense. But that diaphragm will fatigue, and that diaphragm will need to be reoxygenated, and it will need to recover. And in that, it actually gets stronger. So that deep breath that you've taught your clients and in yoga and meditation, I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, that's how you strengthen that muscle. That's how you strengthen those muscles.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, it's all about, this brings me to another thing I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm considering making a video on it, relating focus of the camera to focus in life. Like focus nowadays is like a superpower.
Oh
When
yeah.
you think about all the distractions we have, it takes so much willpower to just focus on one thing and not check the 52 messages that came through in the last minute on your phone. Especially today with the COVID and all the information that's constantly. I'm sitting here trying to edit videos. I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that interview.
Yeah.
It's like, and yeah, focusing is a superpower, and therefore that's why meditation's such a good thing, especially for like artists and whatnot, because you want to be able to focus on finishing those projects that you're working on. But the best way to practice focus, it takes practice like anything. So what's the opposite of ADD? Focusing on
Yeah.
one thing for an extended period of time.
Sure.
Right? Focusing on full inhales and full exhales. Start with 20, then work your way to 90. that's what I try and do.
I would say that if how could I explain this? If art if creating art is the transcension of focus, and what I mean by that is if you can achieve such a level of focus that you're no longer focusing, you're just creating art. Does that make sense? Right? I guess when an artist
You mean flow?
exactly, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. Whatever you want to call it. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So when you are there, the world just ceases to exist, and you're in that space. You're in that moment. You're there. You're just in a whole other dimension, and time just flies. So if you can achieve that level of transcension, then I think that artists have a gift in that sense, where many people don't even know you don't even know what that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
People can't even picture it. They can't feel it. There's no empathy for it. It's a foreign language for them. If you've got the ability, the gift to achieve flow on demand in one particular activity over and over again, whether it's painting, photography, sculpting, whatever, you focus that on your breathing, if you can achieve, if you're one of the rare few that can do it at all, and you can do it with your breath and breathing and just being aware rather than creating the art. I guess you're letting the art create itself, right? Like does the painter draw the picture,
Uh,
or does the canvas really create the art, right? I mean, who really paints that picture? So if you can achieve that with your breathing, I think that most artists would find a whole new level, a whole new layer of that flow. Because while they're there, they're strengthening their ability to be there and to stay there. So if you can kind of transpose one with the other after practicing the breathing in that way, I think that that might be like an artist's superpower, like an artist's superpower beyond being able to achieve that flow. So
yeah.
I think that in that breathing is really where the magic happens. And I'm curious to know, maybe they should do this, maybe they've done it already. What if they hooked up like a monitor to an artist when they're in flow and they just watched their breathing patterns just to see, because I wonder if their breathing patterns are incidentally the same or at least similar, share some vein with the breathing that we're talking about practicing. I wonder if that is just inherent in that flow or not, or to what degree it is. I bet you that it is. I bet you there's some degree of it there. Your breathing is relaxed, your heart rate is low, you've got no stress hormone, minimal stress hormones in your body. You are relaxed. You are just, I mean, you're really in another level of consciousness, if you will. What happens to your breathing when you're there? I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thing to talk about, and some of my thoughts on that are because we in general, not just you, talk about it as if it's you use the words like we're somewhere else, and what I think it's not necessarily somewhere else. Some people like Eckhart Tolle refers to it as intense presence. So it's the
Mhm.
idea is like you're somewhere else, but really you're just not
You're
thinking.
right here. Right, right.
You're more in associated with feeling and being and creating, and it's all like one thing. And you can't really be like thinking. It's the same thing with like when you're in a fight or you're doing jujitsu and you can't think about the move you're doing. It has to just come intuitively,
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah. Anyway, just wanted
So,
to throw that. It is this. It's kind of the secret to finding that flow, and it's digging into presence. That's what I believe has been my best way to get into presence. When I run into a stressful situation, it's like the thoughts that are keeping you from doing too much because you're thinking about way too many things. But if you just, that's how you get like, I feel like a lot of people don't understand what presence is. They're like, oh, present. And then they start thinking about what being present is. And you're like, no, that's not being present because your thinking can only be in the future or in the past. Like
mhm.
presence is more like feeling, or when you look at an amazing piece of art or you're creating an amazing piece of art and you're space where you're just like in awe. That's presence, being in awe of like how the air feels, how things look, how the light's hitting something, how something tastes, how a good piece of food tastes. That's
so,
zen.
so a good way to describe it then might be that in that in when you're in your flow, when you've got that presence, then maybe that's where matter actually turns into energy, right? Because to your point, or to that guy's point, there is no elsewhere, there's only right here, but there's a very, very, very right here, and it's in this body, but this body doesn't exist, right? When you're creating like that, it's simply energy transferring from one place to another. So maybe that's where that, I doubt it, but maybe that's where that E equals MC
You're
squared 50.
riding the wave. Sorry, you're riding the wave of time. Like that's why I think that's why they call it flow. It's like life is this like constant wave that's
Yeah.
going,
Hmm.
and when we're thinking, we're not on that wave. like, like
Well,
we're just
right.
like
On top of it.
where's this wave going, or where was that wave in the past?
Yep.
Instead of like being on the wave,
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, man, good stuff.
I actually have what the heck is his name? From Flow. What is that?
Yeah, the book flow. I never read that, but my book was always The Power of Now,
Okay.
and there's other books that I've read that kind of go into all this stuff.
It's back there.
Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to read it, but
It's a good one. It's a good one. I think that there's a number of books that have come out that have kind of built on that.
yeah,
And get one step further, but it's certainly worth the read. It's a good, quick, easy read. It's a little existentialist in nature, which is good because I guess that's really where the soul of that flow lives. But it's yeah, it's certainly worth the read. You probably finish it. I don't know. I think I knocked it down in a couple of days. It's not too long.
yeah. What are you working on anything right now?
I'm working on trying to get out of my house right now. I'm stuck here in New Jersey. We haven't been allowed to leave, which I think is ridiculous. In about 6 weeks. So last week I realized that I've been given this 2 to 3 month period off, and if you were to have asked me the day before the lockdown happened, what would I do if you gave me 2 months off where the whole world stopped? I really wouldn't be happy telling you what I've done so far. So that's kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, and so I want to get back into writing. I'm getting into reading another great book. Actually, I got it right here. And if you ever read it, you'll understand why it's always right next to me. O.G. Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world. Have you ever heard of it?
I have. Show it to me, if you
It's
don't mind.
it's not necessarily
Yeah, it's blown out.
specifically a sales book.
Yeah, yeah. I
Did you
understand.
see it? I can't tell.
Yeah, it's not that great. Okay, now I see it a little better.
Yeah, greatest salesman in the world. Definitely a great book for anybody to read. My brother actually bought it for me. I think that books are one of the greatest gifts that somebody can give me. And
I feel you.
the book just showed up in the mail one day last week, and I opened it. I read it in one sitting. It took me about 3 hours. I couldn't put it down. I couldn't put it down. There's only two books in the world so far that have done it. The Greatest Salesman in the World is one, and The Alchemist by
I like that.
number two. The day that I got it was the day that I read it, the whole book cover to cover. But Greatest Salesman in the World, it hits you if you're a hardworking individual, regardless of what you do, sales, retail, it doesn't matter. That book has a place in your heart, no question about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out. I really into that. Sounds good.
Yeah, good book.
I recently got a new book. Yeah, I don't know how I came across this. Actually, okay. So the one I recently read a book about body language just because I'm interested in people and you
Mm-hmm.
know understand people and who hasn't been lied to in like a relationship or something by our age, whatever age we are,
Yeah.
like who hates being lied to, who looks back and is like, the signs were there. Like you look
Yeah.
back, like the signs were there. I was too stupid to see them, and so something got me to buy, this FBI agent's book, What Everybody Is Saying. So basically reading body language. And oh, dude, you will appreciate this. So the basic concept is that we have our limbic brain, which is your body, and then you have your prefrontal cortex. I'm pretty sure is the part of the brain that it talks about. So your prefrontal cortex is the thinking brain, right? The one we were just talking about, the lying brain, the
Mhm.
one that can lie, like
The human brain. That's what separates us from the apes. Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's the idea is like a lot of people think you can read people by reading their eyes and looking at their face, but actually the face is the most lying part of us, right? Except for like the fact that a real smile from a fake smile has to do with the cheek
Yeah.
right here. Most people are familiar with that one, but what it really comes down to is reading the body. So the body, you have certain tics and certain movements. Like if I wasn't enjoying our conversation, I'd probably be like pointing my shoulders away from you. It's all like certain things. Like if I'm lying to you and I'm not feeling comfortable, I have to pacify myself. So like most people can't even stop themselves.
Yeah.
Lying to you, they'll like, men will massage their necks or grab their neck or ventilate themselves. Like it's so many little things, and it's fascinating. The best one that he talks about in the book, I'll try and tell you real quick, is women. Like, we rub our necks. Women will touch this little, I forgot what you call this thing. This
Yeah,
little,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
the throat. He has like a really good example where he's like trying to find this kid, and he goes and meets the mom. And they start questioning the mom, but they don't mention the kid. But when he did mention the kid, she was like, "No, I haven't seen him." And then he does that like 3 times throughout their conversation. The third time, she's like, "No, I told you I don't know where he is." And then they search the house, and of course they find him in the closet hiding. Yep. So it's really interesting. Like, our body holds our truth, and this is the same in yoga. Like, that's why people, work out these hidden emotions that we store in our bodies. Men store them in our shoulders for the most part, from what I learned in yoga, and then women mostly hold theirs in their hips. And that's why some people, if they've never done yoga before and they go in there and do yoga, they start crying for some reason. They have no idea why they're crying.
Release or something.
Like,
a release, right? I mean, like an emotional release for them.
Like, they might not even know what it is. You don't even have to know what it is. Same thing with like a lot of breath work. You do a lot of breathing. I know you said you were really into breath work. What I was getting at is, because I was reading that book, I think YouTube referred some interview to me of this woman who just, like, her book literally came out like last week, and she's a Secret Service agent, and it's all about reading body language and stuff, but it's more than just that. It's got a whole lot of things. Amy Panopoulos, I don't want to say it wrong on video, but anyway, so I'm working on that one. Maybe we'll catch up on that soon. It's pretty good so far.
I think if you were to go through my YouTube history within the last 20 videos, you'd probably see 6 or 7. I don't know if one of them is from that girl Amy or the CIA agent, but one of them, they're not TED Talks. There's another video that each of the ones that I'm thinking of did, and they go into the same exact. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, your feet will always point to where your intentions is, right? So if I'm in a conversation, my feet are pointing that way, I'm really not involved. I'm thinking of a way out of here. Also, there's certain tells, or certain number of tells within the first few seconds after asking somebody a question. If they have 1, it's not a big deal, but if there's 2, that's an indicator that they might not be telling the truth. I'll send you the link to these videos. You let me know if it's the same people or not.
Possibly. Navarro, his last name's Navarro, is the guy who wrote the book. I think it's Navarro. I have it right here. I'll just look. Check it out. I use a ghee bag. This is what you put ghee in, but I made it into a book bag. So every time I'm ready to read, I got like a notebook to write in, and different books that I'm working on. This is the one. Navarro, Joe Navarro.
I think that's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some TED Talk and stuff. He's cool. And then the one that was recommended to me, which I just started on, is Evie Pomporos. I doubt I'm even saying it right, but I literally just started on this one. I'm like 2 chapters in, but it's called Becoming Bulletproof. Protect yourself. Read people. Influence situations. Live fearlessly. I just love this kind of stuff. I don't know what it is.
I got a couple of body language books here too. Right? This one. I think you got me trumped, bro. This is Teach Yourself Body Language. I think I think you got me beat. I don't know. I guess I'm only missing like the Idiot's Guide to Body Language.
All good. It's all good. Do you want to? What's your experience? We can get back to breath work. Like, what's your favorite? Do you have like your favorite practice?
I play around with it, and I follow Wim Hof pretty closely. I've never taken any of his workshops, so I'd certainly like to. He I feel like his 30 breaths in number is an arbitrary number.
Yeah, yeah,
As a matter of fact, I know that it is, right? I mean, you start there and you get up to greater and greater amounts. Now, what I do is I look at it more from a performance standpoint, and I like to get a little lightheaded like everybody else every now and again. So I'll sit there and see how long I can take it. And what I've gotten better with is, I guess, more of the spiritual component of it, where I'll go through the breaths, but what I try to do is I try to empty everything, my mind and everything, when I exhale that last breath. And I try to just stay there, because I figure I've got anywhere between like 2.5 and maybe like 4.5, 5 minutes of just weightlessness,
yeah,
where I feel like if I can maintain that weightlessness, I can go to different places inside of my head, untie certain knots, open certain doors. I feel like there's a lot of spiritual experience to be had when you achieve, I guess, certain biochemistry and certain neurochemistry kind of allows you to go to another place, or be completely present, whichever it is. But when I do it in practice, it's really more for feeling my muscles work, because I do a lot of mindful movement with my clients, being corrective exercise specialist and things like that. I'm very big on the body and where it is in space and how it functions and how the alignment. So when I do my breathing, I'm not just focusing on getting to that state, to that headspace. I'm focusing on feeling what my body's doing to accommodate for that. So, for example, when I breathe in, I'm trying to make sure that it's really just my diaphragm as much as I can. Focused on just my diaphragm moving, not my shoulders rising, not my rib cage expanding, but simply just isolating that particular muscle and feeling it contract under tension and lengthen under tension. And in doing that, I've been able to improve my economy, if you will, my breathing economy. Um, Obviously, the endurance of the muscles improves, so I'm able to take bigger, deepers, more times and for longer periods of time. So that improves my performance and really the effectiveness of any of the other breathing techniques I do. Because if my breath is extremely long now, compared to it used to be like very contracted, then I'm getting way more out of it than I was previously, to the extent of maybe 2 or 3 breaths worth. So when I'm focusing on my breathing range of motion, if you will, I've noticed that I've gotten so much more air in my lungs. I've got such a greater lung capacity now, and it's not just because my diaphragm is stronger or able to endure tension for a longer period of time. It's because my whole body is accommodated for that. So when I breathe in like that, my intercostals, the muscles in between my ribs, need to be able to stretch to accommodate a greater lung capacity. If you have an extremely strong diaphragm, but your intercostals are too tight, you're not going to be able to really fill that balloon because there's a cage around it. So in practicing those deep breaths and allowing my body's musculature to really accommodate for a greater lung capacity, I get way more mileage out of all of the other kinds of breath work that I do. But I feel like the breath work always it basically gets you to the same place no matter what you do. If you're doing box breathing, 7 seconds in, hold it for 7 seconds, 7 seconds out, hold it for 7 seconds. I kind of get to the same place when I do 30 deep breaths in, 60 deep breaths in. Might take me a different like time frame, but I still always get to the same place. So I think that Vim's method of those big, deep, protracted breaths, it's like the quickest distance from A to B is really his breathing technique. But I found that I'm able to do a lot of things when I do it. I do that breathing when I run. I do that breathing when I do my endurance sports. I do that breathing when I'm under stress. Actually, now it's a reflexive thing. When I'm under stress, I'll notice that if I'm thinking very deeply, not in flow, but if I'm intently focused on the solution to a problem, I'll find myself holding in a tremendously deep breath, and I won't realize it until I have to let it out and take another one. But I feel like it's almost like my body's natural stress response is to find that space by way of my breathing. And I've noticed the same thing when I do my running. I'll go run 15 miles, but I'll begin those deep breathing, 3 or 4 minutes before I even begin running, and I'll maintain it for the whole hour and a half that I'm running. And I feel like it allows me to find my flow, which is during my exercise, where I can kind of take my head out of it. My head is somewhere else. My body is here, and it's going through my running motions, and I can, check in every now and again, speed it up and slow it down. But it allows me to really disconnect and let my brain do all the hard work while my body is just running through this repetition. And I say that really, the only way that I can silence the demons in my head is if I beat them into submission. And for an artist, I feel like perhaps the way that an artist defeats the demons in their head is they call them out onto the floor. They call them onto the carpet. And there's something in the tone of your photography that tells me who you are, right? There's something in the tone of Picasso's work that tells me who he is. I mean, you could, you know better than I do, but you can track certain painters through their life cycle, right? Who was the artist whose colors got brighter and more vivid as they got older because his eyesight was getting worse? Who the hell was that? I forget.
Rembrandt?
I have no idea, but I know it's somebody, right? And
Caravaggio had some bright stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Right, but you can identify the artist, and not even the artist. You can identify the hand that painted that, and that hand might not be the artist's hand. It's the artist's hand. So I feel like you guys called the demons out on the carpet, and you photograph them, you paint them, or something to that effect. Me, on the other hand, I just pummel them until they're not loud enough for me to hear anymore. So the breath work allows me to do that, because if I got gassed in the first 10 minutes, that's not enough of a release for me. It's not. I'm barely in before I got to get out. So the breath work helps me extend the period of time that I'm able to do that. And I think that it does. I think, and part of the reason why I think fitness is so great for so many people, because that physical exertion teaches you something about yourself that you don't know. And it's not how tough you are or how resilient you are. If you reach a certain level, it allows you to really separate and find things in there that didn't otherwise exist. When I'm running, if you called me while I was in the middle of a run, I'm a completely different person than I am right now. And I'm not an aggressive person, I'm not an angry person, I'm not necessarily a subdued person, but I feel like the gears are just so much well oiled in there. And nothing that I want to hear is in there, and everything that I want to hear, I create. So the breathing allows me to do that, and I feel like that's my greatest gift to the world, is to be able to teach people that about themselves and how to find that about themselves.
Cool. So that's kind of your purpose. That's what you're here to do.
It is now. This is exclusive. I just figured that out. I just put it in the shortest. I just put it into 3 sentences. I've never done that before.
Dude, that's the craziest thing about doing this whole thing. I've been vlogging more, not necessarily posting it on YouTube, but there's something about just trying to articulate your ideas that it just something, I don't know, it's hard to explain, man. You're just like talking about it to the camera, and you start to, once you verbalize your thoughts, somehow new things come up and you just develop new things. We're at an interesting time.
So I've got a theory on that. And my theory, I think you'll probably agree. My theory is that, well, for one, we think way faster than we can talk, right? We actually have to slow down in order to make these sounds that, a concept, right? We put it into words. And when we don't have an opportunity, when we're not forced to slow it down, that CPU in there is just overclocked, and it just kind of runs away on its own. There's nothing there keeping it in bounds, which there's nothing there to slow it down enough for it to really hear what it's thinking. And when we say things out loud, I feel like it allows us an opportunity to change the end of what we were thinking in the amount of time that it takes for us to explain what we were thinking. And that kind of helps us keep things in bounds.
That's part of. I mean, this is interesting. See, I got a whole like 50 thoughts just went through my head, and I'm trying to figure out which ones to say first. Let me back up a little bit. This is going to go back to what you're saying. So, at one time, I got this from reading the biography of by Walter Isaacson of Leonardo da Vinci, right?
Okay.
So, at one time, that was their technology. The idea, like, he probably wouldn't have been who he was if he didn't keep a notebook on him at all time. And if his parents weren't notaries, he probably wouldn't have as much access to the amount of paper that he had at those times. Mm-hmm. So he always, this is just what I thought from reading the book. So he always had a notebook on him. He always sketched and draw and writes. So, and that brings me to a practice that I've picked up again recently, which is called morning pages. And that's from a book called The Artist's Way. And this practice is something I started doing, and I was moving, and I went through some old books, and I found all these old notebooks. And it was from this time when I lived in Los Angeles, and I consider it a very creative time in my life where I created a lot of some great work, and I had some good jobs, I had good whatever. It was just a good creative time in my life. And it was at the time I had the Artist's Way practice. So what that is, and if anybody's watching this and interested in that, I'm also big into morning routines. And this woman who reintroduced it to me is Amy Landino, and she has a really good video where she really explains why morning pages are so good. But the practice of morning pages is writing 3 whole pages, and you're not trying to be creative, you're not trying to do anything, you're just writing what you think. Whatever comes to mind, you just write it. And if I can't think of anything, I'm just writing, this is bullshit, I don't feel like I should be writing all this page, and then something will come up, and then you just start thinking. And so you just write all those thoughts, and it's amazing what will come out of you by the 3rd page. And most of it's not even legibly. But if I have like this amazing thought where I'm like, holy shit, I need to write, I just write it all in caps, legibly, and then it'll be scribble, scratch, scribble, scratch, scribble. So my point is back to kind of like we were saying, like the next level, our technology is this phone that we can just talk into, and that's like the next level of expression, like writing, our thoughts to our hand. I guess it's even more powerful to speak whatever you are doing. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud right now. It's interesting. It's just interesting thoughts. Like we're at another level of evolution because of our technology.
Well, yeah, and whether or not that's a good thing, I think that there's no question that at some point in time in the future, the lights are going to go out. Okay, and whether that's 4 billion years when the sun eats the earth, or if that's next week when something catastrophic happens, the lights are going to go out. And we may be here when it happens, or we may not. It might be our great-great-grandkids, or maybe it's just well past the time that, we left Earth and went to another galaxy somewhere. But the lights are going to go out someday. And when they do, I think we're going to see Darwin claim a huge victory here, because there's going to be so many people that lack the ability to communicate with another person in the flesh.
With an actual being, yeah.
Yeah, and this whole COVID thing, I'm thinking about it. It's awkward for me. It is so awkward for me to see somebody when I go to the store and not shake their hand. It's uncomfortable for me. It was uncomfortable for me, 3 months ago when I would reach out to shake somebody's hand and their hand just wasn't already there. And it's weird for me now, and I feel like there's this tension.
I've been noticing that too.
Right, there's this communal tension where you meet somebody and you're like, hey, hi, and you both look at each other's hand and like doesn't move.
Yeah, like,
you look back up, and you're like, how's everything? Everything's good.
I'm like, hey, you believe that shit?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what it is. You want to. I go running out on the street and I pass my neighbors and I'd usually stop and talk to them. I can't do that anymore, or I can, but like now I don't know if I'm invading your space. I want to respect your space, but like I kind of think this is bullshit too. Like, but are you like me, or am I like? It's just weird, and I feel like
Are you
there's
are
some.
you are you one of those that are watching CNN? Oh, okay. I won't shake your hand. Okay, I get it. Anyway,
But
sorry. Cool.
it's so true, and I feel like when we're not able to, community is a thing that makes us human. I mean, this is what we would seek for.
True, man. That's the biggest.
Food,
I mean,
shelter, and
there's like
safety.
good and bad to everything, right? Yeah, that's the whole.
There is, and communicable diseases have always been a thing, and but what hasn't always been a thing is media and news, and what's been a thing for even a shorter amount of time is the biased media and the that they put in the news. So you've got one guy screaming one thing, even if the other guy doesn't agree with it, he's going to say the opposite because I want people to watch me too, and we're stuck in the middle of this crossfire, and we don't necessarily know what to believe. So when when I see somebody and I can't shake their hand, I feel like that's a missed connection. And I understand the circumstances of it, but I still feel like as a man, the wrong or right, I judge you by how well you shake my hand. If we stick our hand and it feels like there's nothing there, I make a certain determination. I might be proved wrong. I give you an ample opportunity, but I want to feel like we're connected, and I can't feel that way by simply a verbal promise. I feel like I need that physical contact. I have to know that you're here. And we're disallowed from being able to do that. Now these kids, some kids don't shake hands anyway. They were just never raised to, like I've got an 8-year-old son. Is he 8? I got a 7-year-old son, and ever since he was a baby, my daughter, 8-year-old daughter, introduce yourself, shake their hand. This is how you shake a hand. I mean, we went over that. It's important. So if we can't communicate, how are we going to be able to barter food for ammunition when the shit hits the fan and the lights go out? Not going to be able to do it.
I hope you show him how to give a solid handshake. I
Always
can't handle those dead fish,
drives me
bro.
nuts, man.
I'll stop somebody like, hey man, I don't know, like somebody must have not taught you this. Like seriously, I was like, I don't want you to do that to anybody else because it's cringy. It's like, I'm real, dude, man.
That's Southern hospitality, bro. Up here in New Jersey, we shake your hand if there's nothing there. We're like, all right, man. And then we've even got this secret handshake, which, oh man, I can't even explain it. It's a smack, a snap, and like you snap. It's like some old school like '90s handshake where it wasn't even a handshake. You'd see your boy in the street, you'd smack hands, you'd grip fingers, you'd snap your fingers, and like that would be it. So I mean that's like the secret handshake. But I don't know. Up here in New Jersey, if you can't shake a hand, we're just like, all right, you're just automatically lumped in a certain category. And it doesn't even have to be hard. Just let me know that you're there. You know what I mean? And I don't try to gorilla anybody's hand, but
Yeah, that's the point. It's not.
show me you're alive.
There's people. Yes, at least show you that you're alive, but not obviously. Don't be squeezing.
No,
Don't be
no,
like trying
that's
to
a dick
overpower.
move.
That's the biggest misconception, the biggest bullshit. That was around, when I was growing up. I remember hearing people talk about that. You want to have the thumb on top. You want to be on top. It shows your dominance. You're like, why would you? Most people, you're not making friends by showing you're the most dominant one. Like that. I'm sorry.
It's true. I had this conversation with my brother probably a couple weeks ago, right? Now, all right. So, where are you from? Are you in Louisiana too?
Yeah.
All right. So,
I'm at Baton Rouge. From here, I moved away and lived in California for 7 years, and then I moved to New York for 7 years.
Okay.
And I recently moved back.
Okay. So, where in New York? New York City?
Yeah, in the city.
Okay.
I was like right in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg.
Okay. So, my father's a Brooklyn Guinea, so Italian guy, born and raised in Brooklyn, right? I mean, with him, it's, I get Donald Trump because I know how he deals in power, right? You go into his office, he's got the super soft couch, you sit in it, you sink down real low. You might think that it's comfortable, but he's way up here and you're down here, and that's just the way that you play the game. There's nothing offensive about it, but that's just the way that you play the game. So the handshake was always the same, and my dad was from that school of thought. You want to grab real hard, you want to let them know that you're there. You never show your palm to them when you shake your hand. And I was thinking about it, and I began to realize how I shake hands. And when I shake hands, I'm actually like a palm up shaker. I always present my hand palm up. And I learned that Marcus Lemonis does that too. Did you ever see The Prophet on TV? Multi-billionaire, philanthropist, investor. And when he shakes hands, he always leans in, lowers his head, and he puts his hand out palm up. And I found myself,
that's body language as well. Like I'm open to you kind of
right,
thing.
I'm not hiding anything, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we, and I realized that that's how I shake hands. And I'm talking to my brother about it, and my brother is more from the old school where it's got to be strong. He's like, dude, but you don't want anybody to think that you're a pushover. You want to earn respect. I'm like, dude, my handshake is firm, all right, it's appropriately firm, but if you talk to me for the next 5 minutes, like, I earn your respect. I'm not a wishy-washy pushover kind of guy. Like, you know that that handshake was actually genuine and not soft. Like, I put my palm up because I want you to trust me because I'm a trustworthy person, not because I'm vulnerable and I'm weak. But I think that people get that I don't want that gorilla grip either, because that's a shitty move. You're a martial artist. You could probably crush an unopened beer can in your hand, right? I've got a pretty strong grip too. I could probably bust one open. But I can't if you've already got that strong grip on me. There's no way I can retaliate because my fingers are already crushed. I got no strength left. It's just a dick move when somebody shakes your hand and they go in like that so hard so fast. Like,
Yeah.
I just think you're an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
You know?
Yeah, man. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What's your like, do you have like a morning routine?
It depends on the morning. My morning routine this morning was impressive. I was up at 4:30 and laying in bed. I stayed awake for another half hour without going back to sleep, and then I got up at 5. I wish I'm really trying to turn into a morning person. I suck as a morning person. I'll work until 2 o'clock in the morning, no problem. I wish I went to bed at 11 and woke up at like 4 every day. Now you've got a morning routine, don't you?
Yeah.
What time do you wake up in the morning?
Lately it's been more like 6. I wake up at the same time as Jocko Willing.
What's that, 3:40 or something like that?
He wakes up at 4:20, but that's Pacific time. So, I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
I like
So
that.
I'm like 6:20 in my time. So, no, literally, no, but for real, usually I'm aiming for 5:30, but lately, since COVID hit, been 6:30, something like that.
How do you get up? What's your technique when you get up? Are you like, once your eyes open, your feet have to be on the floor? Like, how do you do it?
Sometimes, but for the most part, sometimes I'm laying there. Dude, a lot of times I'm waking up at 4:30 and just trying to go back to sleep till 5:30,
Yeah.
That happens a lot. Um, Especially if I haven't been working out. Recently I didn't work out. I just realized I didn't work out the last 2 days, which is not normal for me. I'm at least doing a yoga routine at minimum. But my morning routine, some would consider what I do in the morning a workout. It's not. I don't consider. It's just really light yoga movements, nothing strenuous.
Mm-hmm.
But lately, it's been like I literally wake up, make my bed, throw cold water on my face, go make a drink. I make a what do you call it? It's honey, apple cider vinegar, sea salt. No, Himalayan salt, if that's sea salt. Anyway, Himalayan salt and lemon. I make that drink, and I'll make it a little hot so it melts, the honey, and I'll drink that as I go outside and put my feet on the earth. I try and get like this grounding. The only time I can do it, so I don't look weird to the neighbors. So I go at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I put my feet on the earth and I'll do some like really slow breathing and stretching movements. Now, but lately it's been I stand there and I'll do 30 like Wim Hof breath. Do 30 of those, and then I'll do a hold, and sometimes that takes me to a level. Sometimes it doesn't, and then I'll do 60 after that. I do 60 and then I hold. And then I do some like yoga movements with my breath hold. So I'm bringing that attention to my muscle, to whatever's hurting at the time, things like that, trying to bring that, like trying to heal myself basically. And a lot of times it's my lower back. So I'm doing a lot of stretches and just roll up slowly, like real slow. Yep. So that's mostly like Qigong. It's yoga, but a lot of people call it Qigong. So I do that kind of thing. And that's just like my morning meditation, really. And that's really just about healing the body, getting into the body, getting into that flow state, not looking at my phone. I don't actually won't turn my phone off of airplane mode till, I'm aiming for 9, 10 o'clock. Like, because after I do this breathing and yoga, I go right to my morning pages and then I read and I'll try and write any notes that come up. Sometimes I'll get on my social media and start doing like, because that's a job in itself too. So I'm trying to get these things out of the way so they're not in my way. Like the social media shit, that's a job, dude. It takes me hours to get posts done. Like if you want to do them well, or
I had no idea that it would occupy so much of my, and I don't even do it as much as I should. Half as much
either.
Yeah. And like, yeah, it takes way too long. And for something that's not tangible, it sure takes an awful lot of my tangible time.
Yeah.
It sucks. Now, I wanted to ask you, so when you go outside and you ground, do you do that regardless of the weather? Are you?
Oh yeah, it depends. Yeah, I mean, if it's like too cold, I'm not gonna do it. Like lately, the ground's cold here in the mornings, but it's it gets hot during the day.
How cold is too cold in Louisiana?
Dude, yeah, I can be kind of a bitch when it comes to the cold. Yeah.
Like, what's a cold morning in Louisiana?
It's not. I actually rarely look at it. I just kind of feel it. But too cold is in the 50s, really.
And it's relative. I get it. I mean, it's totally relative. I like my cold weather running, and it wasn't up until about 2 years ago that I was like, you know what? If it's snowing outside, I'm going to go for a run. So I look for the shittiest weather that I can, and I'll run in it or I'll flip a tire in it. But like, I feel like
I get that. That's
right?
cool.
And that's grounding for me. And when I do my breathing, I do the very same thing that you do. Actually, is I look where I feel like the energy is being bottlenecked in my body, or it's just not the right kind of energy. And I have lower back problems. Degenerated discs and stenosis and so many other things, and I feel like I'm actually healing it. I feel like it's working.
Yeah.
So I do that. You know who does a lot of that? You ever listen to Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah, I actually recently read his new book, Becoming Supernatural.
Okay.
Interesting stuff.
He
talks about it, I guess.
Yeah, and he talks about the breathing as well. What is it? You'll know this better than I will. Vinyasa, right?
Yeah, Vinyasa is what I'm trained in. Vinyasa yoga, yeah.
And now, that is. Can you explain that to me real quick, just so I don't misstate what he does?
I actually don't. I'm not certain. What stuck out to me from him was trying to basically, change your life, getting rid of the subconscious mind, the things that are happening in your sub. This is one of the things that I learned. One of the main things that I learned from his book, and it's basically, there's a reason for kaleidoscopes, because they put you in this, and I forget the states, but it's the different wavelength that is where you're more susceptible.
Oh, you're talking like beta waves and stuff like that?
Yeah. Okay. So similar to, us watching TV or watching the news, it's like programming, right? And so people get into that state where they're being programmed and they don't even realize they're being programmed. Like there's certain things that are happening on the screen that your subconscious mind's picking up that you don't even realize you're picking up.
There's a dog running on the beach while they're telling you that if you take this medicine, your nuts are going to fall off and you get pink eye and all this other stuff, but you're not hearing it because you see this. Yep.
Yeah, stuff like that. Exactly. I think he mentions exactly that kind of like that sort of explanation. So, so the main thing was like, when you get into visualization and ideas and the law of attraction, that kind of stuff. When you get into that, he talks about how the end of the day is where your mind, like right before you go to bed, is where your mind's the most susceptible to, which kind of coincides with a lot of religions and prayer and things like that. And so like that's why you pray at the end of the day and in the morning, right?
Mhm.
So morning and at the night is when you're supposed to be praying. So or talking about or visualizing or coming up with the life you want, and you start seeing those things manifest in your life. And yeah, so I haven't been as consistent with that stuff, but for the most part, I try to write, what I want in my life. I try to come up with, and I'm pretty sure this came from his book, where you basically have like a, three, like a little paragraph, right, of everything you want to happen in your life, and you just rewrite that paragraph 3 times before you go to bed, or you visualize it before you go to bed intensely. Uh, so yeah, so I've been trying to do that a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm that consistent, but that's the thing that mainly stuck out. There's so much more in that book. I can't really remember off the top of my head. Um,
He's
I'm
got
sure
another
about
great. He's got a great book called "You Are the Placebo,"
yes, yes, yes.
right? Which I think which predates, I think, the one
Yeah,
that you're reading right now.
absolutely.
And he talks about a breathing technique, and I forget the name of the technique, um, but it's a breathing technique where it's actually intended to agitate your spinal cerebral fluid
Mm,
and and get it charged and do the technique in such a way where your lungs become a pump and that it presses up against your spinal column and moves this fluid around and brings it up to your pineal gland, which gives you this heightened sense of awareness. That's where DMT reacts, and that's where
yeah.
these out of body experiences really originate. And it's in that state which I think is the optimal state for healing the body and allowing the body to heal itself and getting out of your own way, essentially.
Hmm.
And I find his stuff fascinating. And I think that it's interesting that you mentioned that you do that stuff because I've done the same thing. I've taken a lot of Wim Hof's breathing methods and coupled it with Dr. Joe's stuff and put them together because I feel like there's a natural marriage there. And though I don't want to say like I don't see the traction occurring in my physical life, but I certainly feel the changes internally, and I know that that is having its effect on the external world. And he talks a lot about visualizing. Dr. Joe talks a lot about how if we can convince ourselves that a medicine, that a sugar pill can cure us, then we can convince ourselves that we have disease, right? And I'm not going to say anything fibromyalgia, but these people that say that their body hurts and they've got these phantom pains in places and they can't figure out where, that it's because you think you have a problem that you end up having a problem.
Yeah.
And we know this inversely when we can see that positivity can cure cancer, that I think it's something ridiculous like 80% of the time a placebo will actually cure depression, which tells us that it's the wiring and that we have control over the wiring in our brains. And if we can convince ourselves that we're ill and manifest that, we can convince ourselves that we're well and that we can manifest that, which is why you direct your energy to the points in your body that you feel like things are stuck. And the breath work is a way to get you into those brainwave patterns that allow you to really tune into that station and make these changes. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to do it. What he
Hmm.
doesn't talk about explicitly, but he talks about a quantum consciousness. But I think what deserves to be noted is the collective quantum consciousness, right? And there's somebody out there that can explain it better than I can. But a question that I've had for since I can remember, and I'm 40, I'll be 41 soon, is if we look at the drawings that people made, for example, Mickey Mouse. All right, the very first iteration of Mickey Mouse was 3 circles. 2 of them were completely black. Right, it was a very basic, very rudimentary caricature of a mouse. And you look at the colored pencil drawings that elementary school kids are doing now, where they can freaking use a colored pencil and make it look like a butterfly, a real butterfly, in 3 dimensions, and it's a colored pencil on paper. How did we get from Mickey Mouse to this, when this person, the kid that's drawing these ridiculously realistic pictures, didn't have the same training that the cartoonist did, didn't have the same experience drawing as the cartoonist did, but somehow there was a higher base level of proficiency baked into this human that was born. And I think I've always thought, because I feel like we share information in somehow, in some dimension. We share things that evolution, or that generation after generation after generation have really baked into what this human being really is. So, a new child has greater skill than a child had 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 3,000 years ago. Or maybe we've forgotten it over time and now we're beginning to relearn it. And the only reason I mention that is because if you look at the ancient Babylonians and the ancient Assyrians, where these people had trigonometry figured out, they also knew that the solar system was a heliocentric solar system and that the sun was in the middle, that all of the planets orbited around the sun, and they even had Pluto and Neptune's orbits crossing where it was supposed to cross. They had these things carved on freaking cave walls. Yeah. They knew shit 8,000 years ago, before the telescope was invented. How did the only way you would know that Pluto...
Before they figured out the Earth was flat?
Exactly. Yeah. But dude, right? So they knew the orbits of the planets only if you saw them.
All the technology we have now to figure out the Earth was flat.
Right? That we're sitting on a turtle's back. No, dude, you're right.
Flat Earth. Sorry, go ahead.
But you're right. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like we had this knowledge and that somehow we've forgotten it over time, and now we're awakening to it again. And I certainly do think that, we do share a knowledge or a wisdom or some level of information across the ages and across the planet. I really do believe that. He doesn't really talk too much about that, but there's something to be said for our gut instinct or a feeling when we meet somebody, or for that matter, the fact that it takes us time to verbalize our thoughts. But if we just imagine, so this is our output, right? This is our output. I can only transfer information to you as fast as I can talk. But that information is processing at light speed inside of my head. Imagine if we were able to connect without the burden of verbal language, right? If we could just plug in and communicate. And I feel like to some degree there's a wireless network of that's happening. Yeah. And has to continue to happen over time. How does a dog know how a dog is supposed to act? It's got vocal cords. The freaking thing can meow if it really wanted to, but it doesn't know how, because that's just not baked into that. And I feel like there is information that is passed on and on and on.
That's the collective consciousness, huh?
Yeah, the collective quantum consciousness.
Yeah, it's similar to, my favorite example of this is, how many times before the iPhone came out did you go, man, you know what, this cell phone would be cool if I had music in it, and and it could be a camera. Wouldn't that be cool? Hey guys, don't you think that would be cool? And then what happens? So that's been something I've talked about. I've mentioned as a collective. I'm like, Apple didn't make the the iPhone. Like, we all collectively made the iPhone.
Yeah.
I don't know, just some crazy thoughts. Let's do this again sometime, man. I think we're just hitting like over an hour, so I think we'll
yeah, dude, I'd love to.
Yeah, let's I appreciate the time, man. I got to get moving because I got a jiu-jitsu meeting.
No, thank you, man. It was a pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I'd be happy to do it again anytime. So just let me know if there's ever another chance.
Yeah, that was fun, dude. Thanks a lot. Virtual pound.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Later, dude.
That was cool, man. Thanks, bro. Take it easy, all right?
All right.
You will.